At 6 months pregnant, my Emile shoved me down the stairs because I picked my daughter's name. "Change it," she screamed. That's when I cut her out for good. It was a beautiful evening, one of those crisp fall nights, and I was 6 months pregnant, a little uncomfortable but mostly just glowing, or so I thought. We were at my mother-in-law Karen's house, a regular family dinner, and she had me cornered at the top of her sweeping staircase. "Now," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "will you finally reveal the name you've chosen for my granddaughter, or must I continue to speculate?" She'd been making these snide little remarks all night, and I'd been expertly sidestepping them, knowing deep down she wouldn't like my answer. But there was no escaping it this time. My husband, Ryan, and I had already chosen a name, Sophia. We were naming her after my grandmother, the woman who basically raised me when my own parents were too wrapped up in their messy divorce. For me, it was perfect. It was a tribute. "We're going to call her Sophia," I told her, trying to sound as cheerful as possible. The word Sophia seemed to physically repel her. She repeated it, as if tasting something vile. "Not Karen. Sophia?" "Yes, Sophia," I explained. "For me, that name means everything. Ryan was in my arms for 8 months. She cut me off. After his father left, I raised him alone. I sacrificed everything for that boy, and you're not even able to give me this one thing." Her voice was starting to rise, and my stomach clenched. "Karen, it's not personal," I tried to soothe her. "It's my grandma's name." Her laugh was not humorous. It was sharp, brittle. "Your grandmother? The woman who made your husband more important than some woman I've never known." "I didn't mean that," I stammered, feeling the familiar beads of sweat prickle my forehead. "What do you mean then?" she shot back, stepping closer. "Because it sounds like you're saying I'm unimportant. You don't value the sacrifices of the past 30 years. Her voice was getting louder, closer to a shout. Desperate to de-escalate, I blurted out, "Let's talk about this later, when you've calmed down." "Bad move." She moved even closer, and I instinctively retreated, only to feel the cold, hard reality of the stairs behind me. "Calm down," she shrieked, her face contorted. "You're standing in my house, telling me my name isn't good enough for your disgusting baby, and I need to calm down." She took another step, invading my space. "Do you know what I believe? Since the day you met Ryan, I believe you have been attempting to get rid of me. You want him exclusively. You want to get rid of me entirely. That's not true, Karen. I hope you can appreciate my point of view." My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. "Then demonstrate it. Modify the name." Her eyes were icy, in a way I'd never seen before. She was beyond reason. "You can't ask me to do that, Karen." Incorrect response. Before I could even register what was happening, her hand was on my chest, and she gave me a forceful shove. I lost my balance. My feet found nothing but air. I began to tumble. My brain screamed only one thing: keep the baby safe. My arms instinctively wrapped around my swollen belly as my hips slammed against the stairs, one after another, all the way down. The wind left my body as I hit the bottom. I just lay there, breathless, looking up at the blurred ceiling. For a brief, terrifying moment, I saw Karen at the top of the stairs, her arms still outstretched, a flicker of what looked like satisfaction on her face. Like she'd achieved exactly what she wanted. Then it vanished. She came rushing down, tears streaming. "God! Oh God!" She made a slip. I tried to seize her. "Someone call 911. Ryan, pushing through the stunned crowd, fell to his knees beside me. "Are you all right, baby? Are you able to move? Is the baby doing well?" Karen was right behind him, screaming. She couldn't handle it any longer. I was so afraid. I was trying to catch her. "Ryan," I rasped, pain blooming through my body. She pushed me. She gave me a shove. The sobbing stopped. Karen looked at me like a wounded animal. "Do you hear me, Ryan? Have you heard what she's saying about me?" Her voice became high-pitched, frantic, as she seized his arm. I'd never harmed my grandchild. I attempted to apprehend her. "She's perplexed." She struck her head. "Ryan, she is unsure of her own words." No one spoke. Ryan glanced between us, his whole world visibly crumbling. "Just give her some room, Mom. How in the world am I experiencing this?" Karen, now quiet, retreated to the couch and dissolved into fresh sobs. The ambulance arrived. Ryan held my hand the entire time they wheeled me out. He kept asking about my well-being, assuring me that everything would be all right. But his eyes, they told a different story. He didn't know which version of events to accept. At the hospital, hooked up to monitors, after what felt like an eternity, we got the news. The baby was doing well. I started crying, so overcome with relief I could barely breathe. Ryan shed tears too. Then he asked me what really happened up there. He kept mumbling, "Thank God." And I thought, okay, now he believes me. Now he sees what his mom really is. I repeated it to him. My stomach dropped as he went silent for a long moment. "The name made her angry," he said slowly, carefully. "She wouldn't harm you physically, but I am aware of that. It's likely that you lost your balance." She pushed me, Ryan, after placing her hand on my chest. He squeezed my hand, a desperate attempt to reassure me despite my delusions. "You just experienced a horrible event and you're worn out. Perhaps her reaching for you was transformed into something else by your head." His eyes pleaded with me. This had to be untrue for him. He needed his mother to remain the person he believed her to be. I was exhausted. Our daughter's strong heartbeat filled the room. My hip ached. The monitors beeped. And all I wanted was for it to end. So I whispered, maybe. Maybe it happened fast. Maybe I wasn't totally sure what I felt. Ryan kissed my forehead, and his entire body visibly relaxed. "Let's concentrate on the baby's well-being." I didn't have the strength to make him see something he was actively trying to ignore, so I let him believe it. But her palm flat against my chest, the half-second of nothing beneath my feet. I replayed it over and over, all night, lying awake in that hospital bed, hand on my stomach. I knew what I felt, and I knew Karen was at home, calling every family member, practicing her version until it sounded like the real thing. By dawn, the story would change into something I wouldn't recognize. Her falsehood would become the only thing people remembered. I had about 10 hours. Sure enough, by the following morning, Karen's version had already gained traction. I woke up to 15 text messages from people I'd met maybe once or twice. Ryan's aunt wanted to know if I was feeling better after my fall. His cousin expressed hope that I was receiving assistance after learning I'd been experiencing emotional difficulties. Another cousin said Karen had called her at midnight, sobbing, expressing concern for me and the baby. They weren't concerned that she shoved me. They were concerned about me, as if I were the problem. I needed to hear Karen's exact words. So I called Ryan's aunt. "She's just so concerned about you, honey," the aunt cooed. "That poor woman was crying on the phone, saying she didn't know what she'd done wrong. She told me, you've been hormonal and erratic this whole pregnancy. She claimed Ryan has been battling your mood swings for months, and she's been trying to help him, and then to be charged with a terrible crime in her own house. A little TSK. Do you think you're stable enough to be a mother?" she asked. "Sweetheart, she's not trying to be mean. For that infant, she is truly afraid." I couldn't feel my hands. She expressed her fear for my child? She's just worried. All of us are. You know, asking for aid is never a sign of weakness. After hanging up, I called my sister Olivia right away and started talking, rambling endlessly. When I was done, she remarked sharply, "Listen, Emma, you will have to co-parent with that woman for 18 years if you don't get Ryan's head out of his ass before this baby is born. Take screenshots of every text. Document every dialogue. This will only get worse." How worse could this possibly get? I thought. I didn't know just how much worse it could get. That evening, I was prepared when Ryan arrived home. "We must discuss what your mother is saying to others." With a groan, he put his keys down. "I spoke with her earlier today. All of this is definitely hurting her." My jaw dropped. "Ryan, she's hurt? I'm mentally disturbed, and she's telling your whole family about it?" She expressed her concern that I'm unfit to be a mother to your aunt. "She did not say that," he insisted. "She simply worries about you and the stress you've been experiencing." "What did she say to you specifically?" His entire face softened as he sat across from me. He was falling for her. She described her early years to me. When she was 6 years old, her mother left her. She simply left a message and never returned. She grew up believing that no one cared about her and that she was invisible. After having me, Mom at last felt like she mattered and that she existed. His eyes were filled with sadness as he gazed at me. I wanted to scream. I could see where this was leading. He reached for my hand and added, "Naming the baby Karen would have meant she finally mattered enough to be remembered. She claimed that ever since we became engaged, you have been attempting to force her out of the family and have never respected her position." "Did she mention anything about the push?" I demanded, pulling my hand away. "She promised never to harm you. You are aware that's not a suitable response. She claimed that when you began to tumble, she reached for you. She claimed to have been thinking about it constantly, and to find it incomprehensible that anyone could believe she would ever harm her own grandchild. She never once mentioned what she had actually done to me. Instead, she spent the entire session sobbing about her early years. She discussed it. I didn't do it. You also think she's real? I think she loved her son, had a horrible upbringing, and erred in her response to the name issue. However, I don't think she shoved you. That is unbelievable. Everything I know about my mother is false if I think that. It was there, the reality beneath it all. Because he would be broken if he believed me. He was unable to trust me. And Karen knew that. For 30 years, she had made herself the center of his universe. The mother who sacrificed all for her son, the child who was abandoned. She wasn't merely rejecting the shove. Without shattering his entire foundation, she was preventing Ryan from seeing the push. I'm mentally unfit to be a mother. She's telling your family. She's simply afraid. She believes that you will take me away from her. The heir walked out of the room. You're standing up for the woman who nearly took our daughter away. He got to his feet and snatched his keys off the counter. Tonight, I can't do this. Karen had committed a mistake, but she was also planning. She assumed that I would ignore this and maintain harmony. She was unaware that as I reached the bottom of those stairs, I underwent a transformation. She was no longer in contact with the woman who had wed her son. She had a mother to contend with. I had had enough of waiting for someone to believe me. I would have to discover the truth on my own if I wanted it to be revealed. At her house, someone noticed something. There's always something to see. I was going to start making calls tomorrow. And I did. The following morning I began making calls. The only person who hadn't texted me to pretend to be worried or to inquire whether I was getting aid was Ryan's cousin Lily, who had attended the party. I assumed I could rely on her. She called me within 10 minutes after I messaged her to ask if we could talk. I was wondering when you'd reach out, she said. Though I wasn't sure whether you wanted to hear from any family members at the moment, I still wanted to say something. If anyone witnessed what transpired at the stairs, please let me know. I could hear her breathing as she fell silent. I didn't see the push. It made me feel powerless. I had no idea how I was going to prevail in this conflict. Lily spoke next. But I caught a glimpse of her face just before you fell, Emma's expression. She paused. When you fell down, she didn't appear surprised. She appeared content, as if she had accomplished her goal. She was running down in tears when it vanished. Since I too saw that, I was genuinely relieved. I wasn't insane. Would you say that to Ryan? I asked, my voice tight. Bitterly she laughed. He's not going to believe me. They never do. What are you saying? At a family cookout when I was 16, Karen told everyone that I had stolen $200 from her purse. She was so convincing, sobbing and trembling and screaming. She couldn't believe her own niece would do this to her. But I didn't. Lily's tone tightened. She was believed by my parents. They made me acquire a job to reimburse her for money I never took. And they grounded me for the entire summer. Lying about me now wouldn't matter to her if she had lied about Lily when she was 16. I think she still thinks I took it. Lily let out a deep sigh. After she makes up her mind that something happened, it becomes real to her. It doesn't matter what really happened. That someone like her was my mother-in-law, and the grandma of my future daughter, made me feel ill. I showed Ryan everything when he got home. Lily's text regarding Karen's facial expression, the money narrative, and the warning about her delusion. His expression altered in a way I had never seen before after he read it twice. Shaken, not defensive, nor offering justifications. He sat there looking at his phone, as if it were the first time he had ever seen his mother. All I felt was fear, even though I wanted to feel like I had won something. This was not going to end with Karen sobbing over the phone to family members. If Lily was correct about the pattern, the situation was only going to worsen. My phone rang 3 days later, and I saw Karen's name. I have no idea why I responded. Perhaps I genuinely believed she would offer an apology. Perhaps I simply didn't want to give her another excuse to label me challenging. I know you've been talking to Lily, she continued, abandoning all pretense of politeness. I clenched my jaw. I know you're digging around trying to turn my own family against me. I'm just trying to get people to see the truth. She laughed. The truth is that you fell down the stairs and decided to blame me because you've never liked me. You're trying to steal my son from me, and I won't let that happen. I can describe the symptoms of postpartum depression, Emma. And I know exactly what CPS looks for when they receive a call about an unstable new mother. Her voice then became dark and cold. I was frozen in place. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. You want to keep playing this game? Keep asking questions. I could hear the glee in her voice. I'll call every agency. Keep turning people against me, and I will make sure you never have a moment alone with that baby. I'll speak with each physician. I'll ensure that everyone is aware of your unpredictable and suspicious behavior, she murmured. I've already heard from Ryan about your mood swings, your crying, and your compulsive worrying. She laughed patronizingly. Who do you think he's going to believe, sweetheart? His mother, who has loved him for 30 years, or the woman who accused her of trying to harm her grandchild? My hands were shaking, but I didn't back down. Listen to me, Karen. If you ever threaten me or my daughter again, I'll make sure Ryan hears every word you just said. She had actually said it aloud, threatening to call CPS and take my baby. And she did it over the phone because she knew I couldn't prove it. No witnesses, no recording, just her word against mine as usual. And if she was already considering CPS, she had most likely already begun setting the foundation. She hung up, and the room fell silent. 3 weeks went by with nothing. No calls, no texts. No Karen showing up at my door with a new threat wrapped in a smile. And while the silence should have been a relief, it only made things worse. The question wasn't whether Karen was coming for my baby, but rather how much of a head start she already had. And that thought scared me. Every creak in the house made me cringe. I tried to concentrate on getting ready for the baby by washing the tiny clothes and folding them into the dresser we'd painted pink, setting up the crib, and hanging the little mobile with the stars and moons that played a lullaby when you wound it up. But whenever a car slowed down outside, I would always find myself at the window. Ryan claimed that perhaps his mother was finally reflecting on what she had done, but I could see him constantly checking his phone, waiting for something he wouldn't acknowledge he was waiting for. Olivia made sure that only my side of the family attended my baby shower, not Ryan's. Olivia caught me staring at the door and squeezed my hand, telling me that everything would be fine. I tried to smile, but my face wouldn't let me, because I knew that this wasn't over. I kept watching the door the entire time, expecting Karen to enter with that serene smile, which always indicated that she was about to blow up. For weeks later, I was at my OB appointment, and something felt strange from the moment I walked in. The receptionist, who usually smiled and asked how I was feeling, hardly looked at me. She simply checked me in and told me to wait without making eye contact. I sat in the waiting room, hand on my belly, trying to figure out what had changed. Perhaps she was having a bad day, but a tiny, terrified part of me knew better. Karen doesn't forgive. She doesn't forget. She just waits. My stomach was in knots by the time they called my name, and it had nothing to do with the baby. The appointment itself went well. The baby was healthy, and the heartbeat was strong. However, I caught one of the nurses glancing at me from behind the desk and turning away when I caught her eye. Perhaps I was being overly suspicious. I had 3 or 4 weeks until my due date, but after we were done, my doctor asked if she could talk to me in private for a little while. She closed the door and sat down across from me with a cautious expression on her face. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice low. And I want you to stay calm. My entire body went cold. We've had multiple calls over the past 3 weeks from someone posing as a worried family member asking about your mental health history, whether you've displayed signs of instability or paranoia during your pregnancy, and whether you've had any psychiatric episodes. Is there something wrong with the baby? I whispered, my heart in my throat. No, the baby is perfect. This is about something else. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I had to put a password on your file. I couldn't breathe for a moment. What did you tell them? Nothing. We don't give out patient information to anyone, but I wanted you to know because the calls have been persistent and specific. Whoever this is seems to be trying to build some sort of case. I knew exactly who it was. I didn't even need to guess. I was going to say the same thing, my doctor added. And I'm also recording these calls in your chart, in case you need a record later. My doctor nodded, and I thanked her before leaving that office with my hands shaking. Karen wasn't just talking anymore. She was taking action. No information goes to anyone, including family, without that password. 3 days later, my boss called me into her office, looking confused and a little uneasy. I got a strange call this morning from someone claiming to be a friend of yours. They asked if you'd seemed erratic or unstable at work lately. They mentioned you were pregnant and suggested someone check on you. My jaw clenched. Did they leave a name? No. They said they wanted to remain anonymous because they didn't want to upset you. But they were adamant that I should be on the lookout for warning signs. She only needed to sow seeds, get people to ask questions, and leave a trail of worried calls so that if anyone looked into it later, they would discover a pattern of people expressing concern about my mental health. I called Olivia on my way home and told her everything. She remained silent for a while before revealing that she had been doing some research. She had contacted Ryan's aunt, who had inquired about my well-being following my fall, and Karen had been phoning her weekly to weep about me, claiming that I had been experiencing psychotic episodes and that she was afraid for her grandchild. Since I couldn't drive and hear this at the same time, I pulled over. Olivia added, "If something happens." I sat there in my parked car, staring at nothing. Karen wasn't just trying to make me look crazy. She was recruiting people, getting witnesses lined up for whatever she was planning. "If something happens," Olivia had said, "she's asking the aunt if she would be willing to be a character witness." I sat Ryan down when he got home and told him everything. The calls to my doctor, the calls to my workplace, and what his aunt told Olivia. As I spoke, I noticed a distinct shift in his expression. First bewilderment, then disbelief, and finally, something I had never seen in him before. Fear. "She's trying to take the baby," he said quietly. He took out his phone and called her. I watched him put it on speaker. She answered on the second ring, all warm and lovely. "Hello, honey. I've missed your voice." "Mom," Ryan said, his voice clipped. "Have you been calling Emma's doctor?" Silence. A long, chilling silence. Then her voice came back, different. "Careful. You know your wife hasn't been stable. And you've told me yourself how emotional and paranoid she's been." Ryan hung up. And as he sat there, staring at his phone, his face pale, I realized what had happened. Ryan had been venting to his mother, as usual, telling her that I was tired, emotional, and worried about the birth. All of the usual pregnancy stuff. Karen had taken every word and turned it into ammunition. That night, Ryan went to check the mail and returned with a single envelope from his mother, which he handed to me. I opened it, revealing a piece of paper with neat handwriting and blue ink. It said, "All you had to do was name her after me." With a tiny rightward slant, she added, "Enjoy these final weeks together." After reading it 3 times, my hand began to shake so violently that the paper rattled. Ryan grabbed it from me and read it, and I saw his face become utterly white. We didn't speak for a while. I had trouble falling asleep that night. Karen had come up to our house, placed that envelope in our mailbox with her own hands, and while we were inside, going about our lives, she was right there, close enough to touch our door. No longer hiding. I just lay there with my hand on my belly, feeling my baby kick, and thinking about that note. I went into labor at 38 weeks on a Friday morning. My water broke in the kitchen while I was making toast. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at the puddle on the floor, thinking, this is it. Karen had made it clear that she wouldn't miss the birth, and she wanted me to know that she could reach me whenever she wanted. The birth was 2 weeks away, maybe less. When we arrived at the hospital, before I could even say a word, Ryan reminded the nurses that his mother, Karen, was not permitted entry under any circumstances. "If she shows up, you should call security. Don't speak to her. Don't let her speak to anyone, and simply get her out." Ryan had driven me there, exceeding the speed limit by 15 miles per hour the entire way. He turned to me and took my face in his hands, his eyes blazing with a fierce protectiveness I hadn't seen before. "She's not getting anywhere near you. I promise." The nurse looked a little surprised by his tone, but she nodded and took a note. I felt like I had been supported throughout this entire ordeal. After his mom left the note, he completely changed his mind and told himself that his mother was a cruel person. I squeezed Ryan's fingers until I could feel his bones grinding together. And he never once complained as I held his hand through contractions that felt like my entire body was being torn apart from the inside, coming in waves that made it impossible to think about anything else. I was 6 hours into labor. Suddenly, Ryan's head snapped toward the door. "No, no, no, no." The yelling grew louder. He continued to tell me that I was doing great and that our Sophia was almost here. At first, I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the voice from somewhere down the hall. Before I could stop Ryan, he was out the door. I heard his voice blending with Karen's as she screamed about her rights, about her grandbaby, and that we were keeping her away from her own family. Another contraction struck, and all I could do was hold onto the bed rails and try to breathe. "You need to leave now, Ryan." "Honey, I'm just worried about the baby. You know she's not stable. You've told me yourself." I said, "Leave. I'm your mother. I have every right to be here when my grandson is born. You have no rights." Hers was loud and frantic. His was low and hard. "When you shoved my pregnant wife down the stairs, you lost them." "I didn't shove her. She fell. Why won't anyone believe me? I've only loved this family, and now I'm being treated like a criminal. You called her doctor, her job, and CPS. And you left a note in our mailbox telling her to enjoy her final weeks with our child." I gave up my entire life for you, Ryan. And this is how you repay me. By picking her over your own mother? Yes, Ryan said, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. I'm picking her. I'm picking my wife and my daughter. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't leave this hospital, I'll call the police myself. You're not a worried grandmother. You're a stalker. How dare you talk to me like that after everything I've given up for you? A nurse returned, looking shaken. Ma'am, your husband is handling it, but she's asking to speak to a social worker. She's telling people you've threatened to hurt yourself. I actually laughed, despite the fact that I was having another contraction. Of course, she is. 25 minutes later, a woman in a blazer entered and identified herself as the hospital social worker. She assessed me, saw a terrified but very much not suicidal mother, and quickly diffused Karen's last desperate attempt at manipulation. Shortly after, the contractions intensified. Hours later, our beautiful daughter, Sophia, was born. Ryan and I kept our promise. Karen was cut off. Completely. She tried to fight it, of course, sending letters and making veiled threats, but without Ryan's support, without an inch of doubt or sympathy from him, she had no leverage. We got a restraining order. She appealed, but her claims were easily disproven with the evidence we'd meticulously collected. The doctor's records of her calls, the boss's statement, Lily's testimony about her behavior. Karen faded into the background, a bitter ghost in our lives. Ryan became the most devoted, protective father and husband imaginable. He'd seen the monster in his mother, and it had fundamentally changed him for the better. Sophia grew loved and cherished, surrounded by people who chose to be there, who showed up every single day. And I, Emma, the woman who was pushed down the stairs, learned a profound lesson. Sometimes the only way to save yourself and the ones you love is to walk away from the very people who claim to love you most. My peace, my family, our safety, they were worth any fight, and they were definitely worth cutting Karen off forever. Seriously, after all that, what would you have done in my situation? And have you ever had to draw a hard line with a family member to protect your peace? Tell me in the comments. I really want to hear your thoughts.